Hello, welcome back again. This is my final day of my painting on holiday, and I thought today would be a good idea to sort of just have a look at what I've been working on and just put the protective coats on and just talk about D&D, role-playing games, movies, whatever I kind of feel like, whatever you kind of feel like talking about with me. Like that seems cool to me, and also an opportunity for you to hang out with me while I do my thing. So make sure you're comfortable, grab some food and drink if you're just here to chat, and grab your paints and miniatures and brushes if you're here to paint, because I would like you to join in. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll, and otherwise I'm just going to get started. Today's a pretty good day. It's a nice warm day outside, so it's going to be a nice day for me. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I'm painting miniatures. And today I thought I would do something a little bit basic, and that is just putting the protective coats on. I'm going to be using the Citadel Technical Acrycoat. Now, I've never used this before. I have used polyurethanes that you spray on, and I've been told that actually maybe it's better to brush it on. And so this is coming from my brother. I think he actually uses a airbrush to actually put it on rather than a standard brush, but we'll see how this goes. I'm honestly not too sure what the final finish will be like, because when you're doing something like this, you can go with a couple of different ways. You can put on a matte finish, or you can put on a gloss finish and then follow it up with a matte finish so it doesn't shine, or you can just leave it with a gloss finish. Now the benefit of the gloss finish is that it's a lot stronger, so that's why you would put a gloss finish onto your miniatures to protect them. It's because gloss is always stronger and harder, even if it's water based. I don't think there's a huge difference between the two myself, and yeah, so we'll see how we go today. I've got a few to do. I'll just grab my bits and pieces. Supply Nook, how's it going? Glad to see you do this video. I've been wondering how to better coat them. So yeah, so I'm just going to use this one, and I'm sure that there are better ways of coating these miniatures than using this particular one, but it was the only one I could get at the time. How's it going, Shiner81? Can't stay today, unfortunately. Have fun, no problems. That's all good. There's not a problem at all. So I'm going to do all of the miniatures that I've been painting on my holiday. I'm going to coat the whole lot. We'll see how well this goes. I'm going to put it a little bit on the base of these first, just to see what happens. I'm kind of curious as to what will take place if I put them on the base. And is it going to be shiny? Is it going to be matte? If it winds up being shiny, if I want to actually photograph them or do a video, a very short video so you can see what's going on there, I'm definitely going to have a matte finish, because it'll just look weird. So this looks quite thick, but the good thing is it's transparent, so that's not really the issue at all. So I'll put out quite a bit, put the cap back on because it dries up so fast, and I think what I'll do is I'm going to hit the base of this miniature, and I don't really want a lot on there, so I'm going to have to brush some of this off. But I think my first point of call is I'm going to do just the base of this and just kind of see what the end result is, because it's easy to put way too much on. Alright, so I'm going to put that aside just for a second to let that do its thing, and I'll come back to it in a second, and we'll do the base of this one as well. It's a very hot day, so I expect that these coats will dry very, very quickly. I thought it would be nice to talk about the Paladin, remastering the Paladin, how you'd go about doing that. I think for the Paladin, because the Paladin and the Wizard are so powerful, but the Paladin is like, in its class, as a half-caster melee, it just blows everybody out of the water, in my opinion. This is why you see parties that are just made up of Paladins. So anything you do with a Paladin, in my opinion, needs to be a rein it back in, which is not a popular thing to do. I did wash this miniature, by the way, if you were wondering. So kind of a lot of the things that I'm suggesting, some of it will be to open it up where I feel like there were restrictions put in place that were just made it very difficult to play, and other times where I think it needed to be reined in quite a bit. So yeah, I don't know how people are going to feel about that today. Okay, so so the trick, I think the key here is I'm going to have to brush on and then brush off, and then make sure I get it done quickly enough that it doesn't dry too fast. I don't usually think that you need to do more than one coat. I suppose you could, but I don't think you need to. So I think I'm feeling pretty comfortable that I think it's not going to wind up being a shiny surface at the end, but it's hard to know. If it winds up being a shiny surface, I'll have to go and see my brother and see if he can sort it out. I'm sure he can. It wouldn't take him long. I know it wouldn't. He'd just get the air gun out and the airbrush out and just polish them all off real fast. So yeah, it did make a big difference actually putting a shading on this, or a wash over it, and I was worried about putting it over the purple, but in the end it didn't make any difference, much to my surprise. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to come back to that in a second. So I do need to, when I put this on, I'm going to have to brush off a lot. So it needs to be really, really thin. I can't wash and water it down. This will be one of those times where you probably do not want to water down your mix. Polyurethanes don't respond well to watering down, I've found. So if you ever find that it's starting to go a little bit hard, don't use water. You need to use a paint thinner of some kind. Because usually if we're dealing with a water-based paint, I would just use a water and would mix it in. But I just don't know what they do quite with the polyurethane finishes. It just doesn't. I've never found it to come out well if you do that. And that's not related to miniature undercoat. That's related to any undercoat, since I used to do furniture as a job. And polyurethane, well, we used to use a lot of stuff that wasn't oil-based because a lot of people I was working with had drug addiction problems. So with the Paladin, the source of their power for the Paladin in 5e is divine, but it's really confusing and kind of a really whack. I don't know about you, but I always find that the Paladin is supposed to be a holy warrior, and yet they don't have a deity. I don't agree with that. I think they should have a deity. They may have an oath or a code that they follow, which is fine. That just gives them a little bit more meat and bones on the flavour and the nature of the archetype that you're trying to play, or the concept that you're trying to play. But I feel like a deity is really important for them, just like a cleric. It's like if you were to have a warlock and not have a patron. And I just don't see the point in doing something like that. So I'm going to encourage you to embrace the concept of having a deity, where what you do with the deity is really, really important. Okay, so that's mostly worked out quite well. Thin layer. I don't want any too much. If it starts sort of looking milky, it's probably too thick. So that one's done. I'll put that out of the way. Let's check this down the bottom there. It's probably my only problem. There is a little bit of, yeah. I'll just have to make sure that once I finish putting the coat on, I actually get rid of any excess straight away. I think that's going to be necessary. I think, if anything, I find the idea of the 5th ed edition. Now, I'm not suggesting that they need to be lawful good, but I certainly feel like they should be at least good. We've had this argument quite a lot at my table, and I totally understand the player who said, I just don't understand a paladin who isn't good in nature. And frankly, I tend to agree, even though I don't usually get into that argument, because there are certain things to argue about in a game, and there's certain things that just aren't worth arguing about, and that's definitely one of them in my opinion. So I'm going to put some more out. I'm not going to put out too much. I'm going to try to coat about 2 at a time, and yeah, just make sure I get rid of the milky look once it's on the miniature. So lots of it to start off with, and then brush off. because you just want a thin layer. Okay, so this is the last of the wraiths. So we'll start at the base because it's going to be really, really thick when I start off. I'll do that. Okay, so I guess another thing that I wanted to say is I think religion should be a standard skill for a paladin with 3 selectable skills. So decouple the skills that you get from the background and just stick with tool proficiencies. I think that's a smart thing to do. I've said this before. I think skills in 5e are kind of like superpowers, so leave the superpowers out of the backgrounds. Make that about the actual, what you did before you became a hero or a superhero or what the heck you want to call yourself, or adventurer. So I think that's a better place to position them, is in the actual class itself, rather than having 2 skills. I guess the problem for a lot of people is they start looking at the background. Well, the background is, how useful is the background? And I think they've lost don't understand what the background is. The background is not supposed to be able to give you really a whole lot of combat features or mechanical play stuff. It is a background after all. It's the fluff stuff, but it's built into the game so that you actually do the fluff stuff. And what's good about 5e backgrounds that they kind of losing is the fact that it concentrates on a different aspect of the game, which is not the mechanical side. So yeah, I think decoupling a lot of things from the backgrounds is important. I also think that having a default building method, which they've suggested Wizards of the Coast as a standard, I think that's a good idea too. But I think the backgrounds need to be seen for what they are. That a lot of these things need to be coupled to your class rather than your background, and leave the background for what it really needs to be, which is background stuff, like what did you do beforehand. Anyway, back to the paladin. Paladins traditionally did not have strongholds. Believe it or not, they did not have a castle. They could not have a castle. They were kind of like I guess that you could kind of, they kind of like, but not exactly like, having a samurai ronin. Does that make sense? Where they were more the wandering knight, if anything, the wandering holy warrior. So they didn't necessarily have a fixed abode. And I think that aspect of the paladin needs to be retained. It's a shame because it means you've got to try to figure out what else to give them if everybody else is getting something like that, which is what I'm probably going to do when I do the rebuild on these things. Okay, so let's just have a look at that. So I actually try to get more of this stuff off the brush. And okay, I'm pretty happy. That's all right. Hi, JP. JP is one of my group members from my home group. For those of you who don't know, we hang out. We'll be playing tomorrow. Hopefully, if enough people show up, we get to continue. Now, what do you have to say? Laugh out. The paladin in our group is never good. They tend to be on the naughty side. Yes, they do. The Knights of Larue campaign comes to mind. Yes, that's very true. I'm not suggesting that they need to be a goody two shoes, JP. It's not really what I was thinking. But I kind of agree with Kirsty that the whole concept of the paladin is very much steeped in it's a knight of order, of goodness. Like there's a, the only thing that I dislike about how the paladin has been approached in the past is the fact that we sort of insisted the paladin had to force their code onto everybody else. I think it's better if they actually live by their own code, but they don't necessarily, unless you do something really drastic, they're really not going to intercede. That they understand the rest of the world doesn't live by their code. I think that's probably a slightly better way to approach that. So this is looking a little bit strained in this paint here. D&D Paladin is more modelled after the Knight of the Round Table originally. Yeah, I guess that's probably a better way of seeing it as a Knight of a Round Table. Yeah, I would agree. I'm just going to get some more of this stuff out because it's not going to be enough. I went through that pretty quickly. I think this miniature 2 is going to be just soak it up real fast. Just a little bit worried about that, actually. Anyway, let's get it on. So yeah, I was thinking no stronghold for a paladin, but then we have to give them some other toys to play with at high level, because I don't like a lot of the stuff they get at high level. I think it's kind of misses the point of high level play completely. And so it's now a process of like, also, what do you give them? Yeah, which I'll get into. Don't you worry. I don't think that paladins should have followers either. I don't think that fits with them. But I do think they might potentially have a squire, because as I said, I think they're more of a solitary warrior who might link up with a group as long as they are sort of on the same wavelength or something like that. But I don't think that they would have troops under their command. We had this discussion, JP, remember? We were discussing like the ranger and the paladin probably not having any kind of followers other than maybe a squire of some kind. And I think that's probably the right way to go. Okay, let's get into here. Okay, so this is pretty easy stuff. It's not complicated what I'm doing here. Lawful good isn't lawful stupid. Lawful neutral is lawful stupid. So again, I don't think we even need to go near lawful. Like the two alignment thing just confuses people, and I think as long as they're abiding by their oath, it's fine. And I don't think that one breach of your oath means you would lose your powers, because in the past, if you played something like 3rd edition, you would lose all of your paladin powers depending on the game master or dungeon master you had if you didn't if you breached your oath even once. I've seen that happen, and it's not a good thing, because then you wind up with this argument like, so hang on, I'm trying not to infringe on what the other characters in the party are trying to do, but if I lose all my powers, well, the character's useless now. I can't do anything with it. And so I'm really at the beck and call of either infringing on what they want to do, or they will make me completely useless in the game. So I think it's probably better that with the oath concept, that it's not tied heavily to what the party does, but more what the paladin does. Like, you know, they're not necessarily going to force, particularly, you know, if you've got a party who's going around murder hoboing everything, maybe that's going to be a bit different. But it's an awkward situation. But I like the idea of a trainee or squire. Yes, maybe a squire or trainee, paladin, apprentice. Yeah, no followers or henchmen. Yeah, you remember we had this discussion, JP, and I think it's the right way to go. But again, because we're not giving them followers, we have to give them something else, right? If we take that away as an option, then there's got to be something to replace it. Okay, so that looks like it's pretty well coated, and it doesn't look too milky. I think I've got a lot of the excess out. Coat goes on, take it out. Okay, next one. I'm just going to grab some water because I'm getting dry. We have a few miniatures to get through today, but I don't think I'm going to take too long to get this done. And it's a nice fine day. I'm not so gummed up today, so that's always nice. It's good when I can actually sort of breathe and talk, and it's sort of, I'm not choking on everything. So I'm definitely getting better. Looks like I'm just going to recover just before I have to go back to work. I don't know. What do you do? Not much. Next. I don't think there should be a limit to the number of times you can use Divine Sense. I don't think you should have a limitation on limits on Divine Sense. I think you make it weaker, but I don't like the idea of putting limits on Divine Sense. One, I think it shouldn't be quite as strong. I would make it weaker in some way, and it's probably not going to give you quite as much information, but you should at least be able to figure out if somebody is good or evil. That's one of the biggest factors of the paladin, is their ability to seek out evil, identify it, and deal with it. I think if there's anything, the Dungeons and Dragons movie, the paladin in that movie is really a good indication of how I think the paladin should operate. Like their understanding of people's failings, but they will try to put them on the right path by at least guiding them as to what they probably should have done. So I kind of think that's like a cool way of approaching it myself. Lay on hands needs to be adjusted to. Lay on hands makes the paladin better than a cleric at healing at first level. Like, well, not first level, but as soon as they get lay on hands, they're better than a cleric at healing, because they can use 1 point to just heal 1 point of damage, which I actually think it would be better to get rid of the multiplier. So instead of lay on hands being your level multiplied by 5, get rid of the multiplier of 5 and it just be based on your level. So at level 1, you would, at level 2 when you get lay on hands, isn't it? Lay on hands is level 2. You would access your lay on hands, but you would only get as many as your level, which would be 2. And you would have to wait until you were level 5 before you could use that feature that allows you to get rid of disease and poison conditions to actually, because you would have to have 5 points of lay on hands, and you wouldn't have that until level 5. That means that some of the other classes that are spellcasters aren't sort of, overridden by the paladin in this respect, because the paladin winds up being just better at doing a lot of things. You don't even need to use less restoration if you've got a paladin around in many cases. I mean, it doesn't solve all problems, but it solves most of them. Disease and poison are probably the most common things you're going to deal with. Conditions, removing conditions, it doesn't remove all conditions. But yeah, that's just sort of where my head was at with regard to that. AD&D explained it better, and the detect evil back then was an action at will, as often as desired. And I think it should still be. I don't think it should be an action. I don't want it to make it an action. I don't think we need to have divine sense be an action, but I think it needs to be at least unlimited use, in my opinion, because I just don't think that it's necessary to put a limit on it. We're putting on a limit on something that really it's a minor feature. I mean, it's certainly, it's and it's one of the key features of a paladin. As a few of you know, I don't like limited use stuff. I actually, if it's too powerful and it has to be limited use, then why are we giving it to people? Make things that just can be used over and over again. You don't have to track them. There's a lot less resource management going on. It means it doesn't matter if you don't use short rests or long rests or anything like that, or you've got some sort of other adjustment going on there. It's all going to work out, come out in the watch quite nicely. That's just sort of my look at that. What do you got here, Fred? Originally, lay on hands was all or nothing, once a day. Yeah. Lay on hands in 5e is really, really powerful. It's way too powerful. So I think, clawing that back. And now I know this is a lot of what I'm saying is, it's not popular, because when you take things away, people get upset, but I do have some ideas for giving them some stuff that would be cool, rather than just taking everything away from them. So bear with me. I'm just going to try to get, I need a new container to hold everything with, so I'm going to just uncouple this little sucker. Just give me a second. I'm just going to be careful where I touch the miniature. I just don't want to get covered in sticky stuff. Okay. Right. So, next one. Hi, Derp. How's it going? I just make lay on hands have to be applied in 5 HB increments. Yes, you could do it that way. That's probably another way of approaching it. But it means that when you get it, you wouldn't... Well, when you get it, you would be able to use it, right? You better use it once for healing and once for remove. My issue with allowing it like that is that I don't want the paladin to be able to remove diseases and poisons so easily, when at level 2 a cleric would struggle to be able to do something like that. It just doesn't make any sense. Even a druid should be better than a paladin at doing that sort of thing. I think it's something that should be coming later on, not straight away. And that's just my opinion. What do you got here, JP? Yes, the AD&D Paladin system made more sense. Perhaps detect evil good could be a bonus action. Well, as I am going to get rid of bonus actions, JP, as you might remember, I had discussed I want to ditch all of the bonus action stuff. What I will do is I will tie all of the abilities that they have that are bonus actions into the move action or the action. So that I'm going to get rid of that. I want to rewrite that completely. Which means it would still work with 5e, but you would have your character just wouldn't use bonus actions, because I wouldn't build the system so you would have that sort of thing as an option. It would just not be on the cards. Because I don't like the bonus action. I think move and action is a much smarter way of approaching the game. Bonus actions are just confusing as soon as you mention it. I rewrote Paladin for other alignments back in AD&D when a player wanted a divine warrior of a deity that wasn't lawful good. Yeah, and so my I guess my head is at, when you pick your deity, whatever the alignment of that deity is the alignment that you would have. So it might be it would be the alignment of the god that you're dealing with. I would prefer not to have evil paladins running around in my game, but I think that's probably the easiest way to deal with it, so it makes a bit more sense. Okay, so I'm going to do this next skeleton. This will be the last skeleton that I have to contend with, and then I'll be moving on to some the Crota. Anyway, let's get this stuff in here. So whack it on, then take it off. Remember, whack it on, then take it off. It's getting warm in here. Ooh, it's hot. Haha. Hello, Pale Rider. How are you doing? I always wanted to have an evil god pose as a goodly... Oh, okay, for 100 years. The Paladin character is a follower of the false god. Alright. Very slowly the character gets pushed into doing things that are evil. I probably wouldn't do that myself. I mean, there are lots of things as a game master that you can trick the players about, but I just don't think... I just don't like the idea of doing something like that. Not with somebody who's trying to play that. It's like forcing somebody to play something they weren't really expecting they were having to play. So yeah, I'm not a fan of that. The false guy and guide thing is, that would have to be homebrew. For me, it's taking too much control of the character. There are certain things that I certainly think game masters should, but I just don't like that one. False god, false paladin. Yeah. What about the paladin's warhorse and his holy sword? Now, JP, I'm going to talk about that. A limit on the number of magic items. Well, actually, I have a suggestion for magic items and how that works. And I'll get to that in a second. We used limited magic items by not giving them away like candy in Halloween. Yeah, that's another thing. Beckme had the Venger, which is an evil paladin. Yeah, I suppose that's true, but I guess the easiest way to deal with it is the paladin would be the same alignment or similar alignment as the deity that they have selected. I think that's where it sort of needs to lie, because it doesn't make sense otherwise. You know, if you're dealing with an evil god, then your paladin would probably be evil, and if your deity was a good god, then your paladin should probably be good. I'm not really that concerned about the concept of lawful, chaos, and neutral myself, but that's just my head. And that doesn't mean it means anything to any of you. Okay, so that's one of the adjustments I would make with Lay on Hands. Is you only get 1 point per level, and you would need to have to wait till level 5 before remove poison and disease as a condition could be actually affected, because you wouldn't have enough Lay on Hands to do that. And it would also mean that they just wouldn't be able to do healing quite as effectively as some of the other classes that are supposed to be healers, or have some sort of healing that's intrinsically their thing. Because out of all of the classes, the paladin steps on the toes of the cleric way too much. It always has. Okay. So that's not too bad. I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to grab my next miniature and whack this off. Now, where were we? Gift of the Divine. You could call it Gift of the Gods. I think that at level 17 that a paladin should have access to a legendary magic weapon. It specifically needs to be a magic weapon, not necessarily a sword, not armor. No, we're not going in that direction. Armor is always a problem. Magic armor is always too good as an option. But a magic weapon at level 17 that's legendary. I also think that before that they probably should have access to at least a magic weapon that isn't legendary, maybe a common magic weapon at level 10. This is probably one of those classes where I'm like, it makes sense for them to have something that is magical like that they can work with. I don't know how people feel about that as an idea, but out of all of the, I mean, if you think about the monk who gets to strike things in their attacks, their unarmored strikes are magical at levels, is it 6? Level 6? Like there's a few classes like that. I think that the paladin should have, not necessarily, oh, this is going to peel off. Hang on, give me a second. So I've got a layer of something that's, this is getting messy. Okay. All right. Not the best time for that to peel off, but it has. Let's see if I can get this back on before I continue. There. Okay, I'm just going to clean off my fingers because they're getting sticky. So different deities would grant different boons or favours or gifts for the paladin that they worship. I think that's a good idea. I hadn't considered that. But JP, you know me. Since it's our group who are going to probably be doing this, I'm going to just give me my notebook and I'm going to write that down. So different deities grant different powers. Powers, yep. Right, I've added that on. Good thing you're here, eh? Hit 0 hit points, rest 10 minutes before standing or taking exhaustion. Make 0 something be avoided again. I'm not really looking at mechanics around that. I don't really want to mess with the mechanics where you sort of start saying, okay, if you fall, you're only on 1 hit point. It's not really where my head is at right now. But I think that there is a space for saying, you know, a paladin is their holy weapon is a big deal, and I think it's something that should be built into the character itself rather than having to rely on a game master to decide when they're going to drop it, because when they're going to compete, this weapon is given to them by their god. It is actually handed to them. And what you can do too is you can have the weapon become more powerful. It might start off as a normal sort of doesn't have a +1 or +2 at level I don't know, level 6 or level 5 or level 7 or something like that, somewhere in that vein, and then it gets a +1 at say level 10 or 11, and then at level 17 it becomes a legendary magic item that they wield. Because I've been deliberately with all the classes kind of giving them some sort of magical item at level 17, because I feel like that at that point it doesn't matter too much, and it kind of makes sense that that's when they get it. And I'm absolutely open to the idea that it be story based. So you get, there might be a quest that you have to fulfill to get it, and so it can be tied into the story in some way. Or you have to take it somewhere to make it more powerful. So it would be driven by the adventure process and the story that your group is putting together, or creating as you play, right? Okay, let's just make sure I've got all of this coated properly and that it isn't too much on there. That's, I guess, my next point, is make sure I don't get too much of this coating on there. But it'll at least get it where it needs to be. So I guess the next thing I wanted to mention was, I had been thinking about the Warhorse. I hate Fighting Steed. As a spell, I hate it. And the problem is it's a spell, and so it means that it's tempting for it to make it available to another spellcaster rather than just a paladin. You wind up with all of these subclasses that can then access Fine Steed as another option, and I don't agree with that. So I think it makes more sense that the paladin have a Warhorse at a much earlier point. If anything, I think between levels 1 to 10, they should have a Warhorse, and that their Warhorse can be replaced, because I know Warhorses are going to be prone to dying in a battle, because they will take them into battle, but that the Warhorse is not necessarily there as a combat substitute, or something like that. So we were looking at a different way of approaching it. I think that's a much smarter approach. Is like, yes, they have a mount, but it's not necessarily going to be fighting, and not till they get to a certain level. And then it would make more sense that, yes, they have a mount and it's capable of fighting on their initiative. But we have to, I think that when it starts doing that, we're looking at a whole lot of other things. I think right now it needs to be not independent. Maybe it grants a benefit if you're riding it. You can't ride a horse into a dungeon anyway, so it's not like having a war horse or war mount is going to be beneficial all the time. Okay, so I just need to get this ready for the next miniature that I'm going to put on here. That was one Laracota, which is basically an evil dog. Could have their deity at a certain level. Their natural weapon functions as a silvered weapon. Yes, that's another way. Or over time, the same weapon gains power. This is what I'm thinking, Pale Rider. If the paladin dies, the weapon reverts to its normal state. Yeah, exactly. So it would only retain its power as long as the paladin had it. It wouldn't be something you could pick up as loot if the paladin died. It's only usable by the paladin exclusively. I think that's a really smart idea. The War Zebra, yeah, I suppose I know where you're going with this one. What do you got here, JP? What protective coatings have you used on your minis? Which coatings have you found effective? I've found that anything that is, you've got to be careful if you're spraying it on. I've found, because it's really easy, because you know how polyurethane, particularly gloss, can go on really thick, and you can wind up with it getting a little whack. It hasn't happened to me a lot, but sometimes you have malfunctions with the spray nozzle, because polyurethane is an awful thing. If you open up a can of polyurethane and you spray it on and you're not brushing it on, one of the annoying things is, depending on the quality that you buy of the can and how you use it, it can wind up jamming the nozzle, and you can wind up with all sorts of stupid things happening. So I'm very much aware of that as a problem. And I want to avoid that hassle. So this is why I'm doing it kind of this way, because my brother said brush it on. But I've just used stuff that I don't normally get it from the hobby shop. This is the first time I've bought a hobby coating product. And as I said, I would not necessarily have gotten Citadel because I don't like Games Workshop's products. I think they are very poor, and they are prone to drying out, and they're not of a high quality compared to what other people are doing, which is much better. But yeah, so that's what I was thinking with regard to that. So at level 10 you would wind up with a celestial mount, and your celestial mount, if it died, it could be resummoned. Do you know what I mean? maybe it would take you a little while, maybe it would take you an hour, but it wouldn't be a spell slot. It would just be something that you could resummon, and then of course you could just send it off on its way, and it would just return to Celestia or whatever it was, or whatever plane of existence it existed on. If you're dealing with an evil paladin, maybe it would go back to the Nine Hells, or to the Abyss, or whatever the heck it was. So I thought that was a much better idea, and so it changes up the mount a little bit. This is one way of giving the paladin something for all the things that I'm kind of taking away, that I had suggested we take away. And this is one, and that is that no more Fine Steed's spell. You just get a mount, and you start off with a normal horse that becomes a more celestial or a more spiritual being or creature, with a few options outside of just the horse. I haven't decided what those would be, but I'm sure we will discuss it at some point. I'm sure one of you will throw an idea out there. Any martial weapon, not a sword, that progressively increases with abilities, powers at certain levels, only applicable to that specific paladin. No multi-use Thor's hammer. Yeah. So, as you know, JP, everything I'm suggesting is not multi-classable. I'm not looking for it to be multi-classed, because as soon as you go down the multi-class route, disaster. You get lots of options for players, but you cannot balance it. It's impossible to do so. That's the reason for multi-classing, is so that you can break the game, which is why older versions of multi-classing were so difficult and so restrictive that you usually did not pursue it. So yes, that's very much where my head is at in terms of the magic item. So an incremental mount for your paladin and an incremental magic weapon to utilize. I think those are all smarter routes to take than currently what we have. Okay, so I'm going to take this one off. I've got to be careful. Base only. Okay, a little bit sticky, but as long as I touch the base only, I should be good. Cool. I generally wait till I am to have a massive minis to clear coat, which is what I'm doing right now, and maybe a big project too. Then use a whole spray can. I also hate clogged nozzles. Yeah, this is one of the reasons I would say, if you're going to use spray on, make sure you have a whole lot, so you're using up the entire can when you do it, rather than trying to do just a small number. The reason I'm doing these now is because I'm going to be, I'm not going to be doing any painting for a while. So for the next 4 months, I won't be doing any painting. I just won't have time. But I know that these will collect dust, and so I want to get the coat on now before they start to degrade, or the paint job starts to get lost. Any specific clear coat that you use? Okay, all right. I know my brother uses Army Painter and Vallejo products. He's found another product that was supposed to be really good, but I don't honestly remember what it is. Sorry about that. If I knew, I would let you know. Okay, going back to the Paladin. Here's another thing that I was thinking that was necessary for our Paladin. Our Paladin Smite. The Paladin Smite is intrinsic to the Paladin. It's really important as a feature. I think it's done a lot of really good things, but let's get real. The Paladin Smite is way too strong. It also doesn't work in a way which is very useful, and because essentially it means that the only thing you're ever going to do with your spells slots is use them for doing a standard smite. You're probably not going to do one of the spells that are a smiting spell. You're probably just going to do your standard whack it, and you're going to wait until you get your critical. And I don't like that. I think that's a real failure of the system. And I want them to be able to smite, but I want them to smite the things that make sense. And the things that I think make sense for Paladin is if you're dealing with get rid of the spell slot use. No longer require a spell slot to be used to smite. I think that needs to be gone. You're thinking, okay, but now what's to stop them using smite on every single attack? No, I've got a solution for that. Limit smite to once per round. There's nothing. My general feeling is there's nothing wrong with making smite a little bit like the rogue's sneak attack. Limit it to once per round. Okay. Now you're saying, well, now you've made Fred it much stronger. No, we're going to tone it down a bit. This is another thing. I would suggest making the Divine Smite, which is what I want to do, a 1d8, not 2d8, and you can't upscale it. There's no upscaling process for it. Now there's a reason why I say don't upscale it, and why, you're thinking, well, at higher levels it's not going to keep up with the rogue now, Fred. What are you doing? And I think there is a solution to this, and that is you can still do it once per round, right? But there may need to be some scaling process that I take into consideration. It may be a slower progression than a rogue. So initially you might find yourself doing a little bit more damage than a rogue potentially, but then later on it would sort of even it out. A number of advantages per day. No, I actually don't like that idea. I don't want it to. Don't want there to be a limit. I just want to say you can use it You can use it every single round, once. That's it. That's an easy fix for tracking. And one of the reasons for doing that is just ease of tracking. So now all I need to do is figure out when we increase the D8 based on their level, so that it is kind of comparable to. Because remember too that, unlike a rogue, a paladin gets extra attack and a rogue does not. Although I'm tempted to give the rogue extra attack as well myself at higher levels. But probably not at the same level as the likes of our paladin, who gets it a lot sooner. So that was sort of what was percolating through my mind. This miniature is proving to be quite difficult to actually access. Just give me a second while I try to fix it up. Okay. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is I want it to only work on fiends, undead, and evil. So it has to be, if they're good aligned, then it would only work on a... it's only going to be effective against somebody who's got evil alignment. Creatures that are considered evil. If they've got an evil alignment, then they get to do their smite on them. But anybody who's good, it would not work. It would not come into play, because I don't like the idea that they can just smite anybody they like, no matter what their disposition is. Now, if they're evil, it would only work on good aligned creatures, and not on evil aligned creatures. Now, I know that sounds a little odd, but I actually think that's a good fix for the nonsense that that class has been through over the years, and what people have tried to do with it. Ultimately, I think that's a nice solution to that. What are some other things that people are thinking of that the paladin needs adjustment with? Because I think at this point now, we're aware that I've taken a lot of stuff away and tried to diminish a lot of things that were really just way too overpowered and too strong, making them an easy go-to for a lot of people. But how do we make them sort of even themselves out so that they're still... And a lot of the ideas I've put forward are only combat stuff. They're really just adjustments to what already exists. And that's probably not going to be very useful to people as well. Oh, I'm getting bitten by something. Just give me a second. I'm going to have to take paint out of a lot of the coat is too thick on this one. So I'm just going to undo this one and attach a new one and see if I can get some of the coating that's on here, get it to come off. Hello, big kid. How are you doing? Oh, sorry, I'm knocking the microphone. Smite should be a daily number rather than a spell slot. I think a daily number is not the solution. Honestly, I think it should be just per round. Once a round. And if you hit, you can do it. Once a round. That's it. Much like the rogue. The only difference is, instead of being a D6, it'd be a D8. and the progression would be a little bit different, and you wouldn't have 2d8. 2d8's getting really silly if you ask me. Okay, this is going to be a little bit difficult to coat this one. I can see it right now. Okay, so I'm going to just go back to this one very quickly. Rogue with sneak attack and more attacks VA round could outperform fighters at fighting. Well, not necessarily, because one, you would still never get as many attacks as a rogue if you gave them extra attack, and you would give them extra attack at I would do it probably about level 7 or 8. And the reason for doing that is to discourage people from trying to multi-class into it. Because then now you don't need to multi-class into it, which is what a lot of people tend to wind up doing, is just multi-class so they can get the extra attack. But you would only ever be able to use your rogue sneak attack once a round too. I don't think once per turn is a good idea. I don't want them doing it on, opportunity attacks. I think that's just... I don't think that was ever intended to be the case. It's just how it wound up working because they didn't really word it properly. They're making changes like that already. So that's sort of where my head is at with that, Fred. You don't have to agree with me. Like, this is just me throwing things out there and seeing how it would all work. Stepping away for a minute, so maybe I'll miss it. But have you discussed their saving throw aura? I haven't. Tell me what you think the issue is with the saving throw aura, because I've found that a paladin's saving throw aura is one of the strongest features I've seen in the game. It kind of almost eliminates the necessity for any other character in the party, if they stand close enough to a paladin, to ever have to make or concern themselves with failing a saving throw, because that aura is so good. Like, it is just too good, right? I mean, you know what I mean. What you want when you get to that level is you want that aura, and everybody's like clustered around to sort of, capitalize on it. It's happened in my game. I'm sure it happens in everybody else's games as well, right? It's like everybody just clusters around the paladin as soon as they get that aura, so that they're always affected. So they're never frightened, and they're always got like a bonus to their saving throw. It's not a great thing. I'm not a fan of that myself. I'm not entirely sure the best way to solve that. I think the idea that they had hoped is if by making the aura not too big. Yeah, that is my problem with it. It is too good. Yeah, I think the idea was that by making the aura just 10 feet, that they would not run into this problem. But you still run into the problem, don't you? Because even with 10 feet, I think maybe the aura is too strong. Because frankly, just a +1 aura bonus is more than adequate. As soon as you start seeing that number going up, it just means that anything that has a saving throw is almost... there isn't really much point doing anything with it anymore. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Okay. So I think maybe the bonus needs to be stripped down a little bit. Maybe giving them advantage, having advantage on a saving throw rather than having a numerical bonus would be a solution. But then, if you look at advantage is kind of like a bonus of anywhere from a +3 to +5. If you get advantage, get to roll 2 dice on your saving throw rather than 1, makes it pretty strong. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the solution is to that. Okay, I just dropped some of this stuff in the splotch. I'm gonna have to get rid of this now before it can set. Give me a second. I'll just get rid of this. There are so many features that the Paladin has that are sort of, and they're all combat. And I honestly, I've not been able to figure out how do you do it so the Paladin has some utility function as well. Because almost everything that I've discussed, as I said, has always been around some sort of combat feature. Really, so it's almost always feels like it's combat. I need to do a bit more research on the Paladin and various types of Paladins to see what would be a good way of giving them something that's a little bit more utility function. I don't know what that would look like, but yeah, I'm aware that, you know, that's a very big part of it that is missing from the game. Okay, so we're doing all right. I got 2 more miniatures. This is going to be the worst one to coat because this thing is just nuts in terms of its detail. So just bear with me. My brush is going completely nuts, as you can see. Party of paladins taking different auras overlapping is brutal. Yes, that's one of the things. Is it's always frightening when you see, if you see a whole party of clerics, that's one thing, but a whole party of paladins, oh gee, you got to be kidding me. Particularly at low level. I don't allow multi-classing. I like a more concise background and progression goal. Yeah, but I know a lot of people do, and if they don't allow multi-classing, my group likes multi-classing. So I said, look, the solution is I don't want them to multi-classing in the game because it's too easy to exploit, but let's address the issues so that the class does not need to be multi-classed for it to be a good class to play and a fun class to play and do the things that you want it to do. So I think that's the solution, is just making the classes more robust and giving people choices within those classes that aren't just like, okay, you take this subclass. I don't like subclasses myself. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but it just seems like it doesn't work. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If the class was good enough, you wouldn't want to multi-class. The reason a lot of people multi-class is because it's not quite doing what they were hoping it would do. And if the only reason that they want to do it is mechanical, then I'm not here to help them with that, because I'm not that person. Okay, so this the Stone Defender is going to be, it's the lightest miniature that I've got. It's also the hardest to get at. I'm sure it will get done. Just going to take me a little bit longer than the others, unfortunately. And then I've got one more after that, which is a Crag Cat, which I think that'll be a lot easier. It's not nearly as difficult to get at everything. What do you got here? Maybe a calming aura of some type that put people and creatures at ease if they're not completely hostile. Yeah, I would rather give them a magic weapon that helps get what they were looking for. Yeah. I see that again for me is I would much prefer to just give them a magic weapon as part of the class feature. You know, they don't forge it; it's given to them by their deity. That's why they are a holy warrior. You know, they have a holy weapon. And the type of damage that it would do, well, of course, you want it to be doing holy damage. So that's radiant damage, right? Radiant damage is very, very much keyed into a paladin. So I think that all works quite nicely. Big Kid, we have a purist. I am on the same page, brother. Yeah. So yes, a lot of stuff to discuss about the paladin. I am very curious as to how this is all going to work out when I start remastering, rebuilding for the paladin. I can see why Wizards of the Coast is struggling a little bit with the paladin and what to do with it. Because when I was looking at it, I was thinking the same thing. I go back to AD&D multiclassing. You can never go back to raising the old class again. Oh, I see. Right, so once you start the new class, you've got to stick with it. Yeah, and of course, like the people who like multiclassing would never like that restriction because it doesn't give them as much control. But let's get real. Whatever I do is not really part of the power gaming or the min-maxing or the optimizing community. I don't really do optimizing and min-max stuff on my channel. Even when I have done stuff, it's really just been Simon explaining to me how you'd go about doing it, and I've done a video on the topic. It's really not been me at all. It's actually been somebody else explaining to me how to do it, because I was like, well, those things seem to get lots of views. Maybe I'll try that. This is back when I sort of, was trying to chase that. Now I've kind of given up. It didn't really work that well anyway, so it didn't work for me, so I'm just not going to do it anymore. Okay. So that is, I think, done. This is a very difficult, this is taking me a long time to get all of the coating where it needs to go. And also take off where there's too much. I'm really hoping, and the inside is going to be the biggest problem. I'm really hoping that it, when it dries, you just can't see any of that milkiness. I just don't trust Citadel paints. They are notorious for doing whack things. They used to be the best paints out there, but then they were the only paints out there. So they weren't really the best paints, they were just the only one that people could find, and Tamiya was not very good. Tamiya was so powdery it was not funny. Okay, let's put that one over there. I think I've managed to keep my fingers off all of the areas I needed to keep it off. Let's grab the next one. This is the last one. This is the Crag Cat. That was dual class, I think, F-Hubba, which was only for humans, but demi-humans could multi-class and raise in level at the same time. Ah, I see. In any case, I'm much more. What I want to do is I want to build the class so people don't want to multi-class. They want to stick with the class itself in its purest form, and which means that the highest level feature and the high level feature for a paladin, I think, is kind of shite, if you ask me. I just don't think it works. I want to give them something that encourages them, if they're playing at higher level, beyond level 10, that they want those features, that it's better to have those features than to go and try and multi-class. And that's one of the problems with a lot of the classes, is they don't have that built into the character progression. The higher level features, because they are always focusing on combat, if you focus on combat, you just wind up making the character more stronger and stronger and stronger, which messes up all your monster maths, right? But if you focus on utility, which is what ultimately all of the martial classes are really truly complaining about. I mean, they complain about not doing as much damage as Fireball and spellcasters, but they just don't have any utility. You know, there's just no features there for that. So I think it's about sorting that out a little bit. Yes, old school, your multi-class character was non or semi-human. The two class characters had to be human. Right. Yeah, min-max always had a weakness. If your encounter attacks that weakness, the players tend to say they didn't. You did that just to negate their min-maxing. Yes, I find that to very much be the case. Now, I'll make it clear. My group are made up of mostly power gamers and min-maxers. Like, JP does a bit of it. He's not as good at it as, say, Simon. But I can assure you that Cajun is very much a power gamer. He does think very much about that sort of thing. So is John. I'm not really. I'm not really a power gamer. The only time I really multi-class is when I feel like I've got no choice, as JP knows. When there's a role that is missing that needs to be in the party and nobody wants to take it, I wound up being a cleric wizard, which was a weird combination, I have to admit, but very strong. Let me do a lot. So everything that I do still needs to appeal to people who are into min-maxing, optimizing, and power gaming. Since my group is made up of many people, but we're not talking about new people to min-maxing. We're talking about, like, you know, JP's been playing the game a long time. He's been playing 5e for, what is it, it's 8 years now, right? And John has been playing 5e for almost as long. I think Simon hasn't played 5e quite as long as everybody else, because he was playing a lot of Pathfinder, but he switched over. But he picked up things very quickly. They're all very bright, like, so it's not like I'm anti, you know, the fun of power gamers, because everything that I do, still, for us to replace it with what we used to use, with something new, it has to do the things that they want it to do. And the things that they want it to do, much to my surprise, is broaden out that aspect. So Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more on this, and this crag cat will hopefully be done. I'm just looking at the finish and how it's drying, and there is a slight gloss to this stuff, which may be a bit of a drag actually. I didn't want it to be too shiny. Shiny means stronger, but it doesn't mean it looks great. It's nicer to have a matte finish on a miniature, which might mean I have to go and send it over to my brother and he can get him to do a matte finish on everything. Not to mention, I put way too much of this onto this head, so I'm going to have to brush a lot of it off. But at least it's protected. That's the main thing, is you don't want the paint coming off, right? And this is why you do it in the first place, so that it doesn't come off. And yeah, okay, so just brush off. I might just grab a piece of paper and help dry out the brush a bit, so I can get the residue off it. It's better, that's working. Do this side a bit more. It's still a bit too thick here. And brush off again. Cool. I was trying not to confuse the multi-classing discussion with the different ways that it was named in the past. What we call multi-classing was named differently, yes. Yeah, fair enough, Fred. Fair enough. I mean, it's not really an issue, is it? I don't think it is. Honestly, I've never been terribly fond of multi-classing. I think it's better to simply build new options that can be attached to an existing class that fit with it, that you can test, rather than throw everything out there as like, try everything with this, because that's untestable. Do you know what I mean? You don't have enough control over that. And they do that because that's how you sell product. And as I have said before, I am not really trying to be Wizards of the Coast. If I was trying to be Wizards of the Coast, I wouldn't bother. And also too, a lot of the reason why I'm having these discussions with you is I want you to do your own thing. I want you to make adjustments to the classes that you think need to be made. I want you to homebrew. You know, has it not been? I mean, it should be obvious. And a lot of you know that I want you to homebrew more, not just adventures, but what I need to do is I need to build a class, like a lesson on how to make a class. The problem for me is, and the reason why I haven't done it, is I don't know enough about it myself. So what I will do is I will rebuild the classes, and when I'm happy, then I will build a class for that. And also building races. I think there needs to be a class on how do you build your own races. Because the Dungeon Master guides, all of them are really useless when it comes to like, how do you make your own races? How do you make your own classes? They don't really give you that level of information. It's not, just doesn't exist. What do you got here, JP? I am just an elf journeyman in our party of power gamers. Oh, the money bag guy. Yeah. JP tracks all of our treasure, our money. He will draw out maps because he's really good at that sort of thing. You know, he's good at visualizing stuff in his head when somebody describes it, and so he can draw out those things quite effectively. He also takes really good notes. Like if we did not have JP's note taking, we would get stuck many times. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of all of this stuff. I want to show you kind of some of these miniatures and what the final result kind of looks like. Yeah, AD&D non-humans had lower level caps than the humans did. Very true. The Thief Acrobat was cool. Some of your thief abilities stopped progressing, but you gained other abilities. So for me, Pale Rider, if we were making a rogue or a thief and we wanted to have Acrobat as part of it, we would build something that would be an additional option that would work with the thief rather than taking the Acrobat class as a multi-class. And I know Pathfinder 2nd Ed Edition has done something like this. Although they seem to have a lot more going. There's a lot more moving parts for their game, right? Okay, I'm going to end this poll. No, I'll end this poll in a second, not just yet. Let me just throw the things in front of you that I've been working on. So that's both of the Lecrota, and you can see there is a slight, I mean, they're not dry, they're still wet, but I think there is definitely going to be a slight sheen to them, which means I'm going to have to send them over to my brother to get matte finished coat on them. But they are at least coated and strong enough that the paint won't rub off my fingers now. So that's one of the reasons for doing it, right? So those. The Oaken Bolter. The Oaken Bolter, this one here, again, it's not quite as bad as the other ones. But you can see there's still like a shiny surface. But it's protected now. And give them more than, you do not want to touch them for a couple of days. I would say don't even bother messing with them for at least 48 hours if you ask me. I find that polyurethane dries fairly quickly and it's hard to the touch, but it's not really set. And water-based polyurethanes they take really, to go completely hard, they take about 3 weeks. An oil-based polyurethane, which is not what I'm working with, they take about 3 days to go completely hard and dry. So there's the crag cat. You can see it's very, very shiny, which is not what I was after. I didn't really want the crag cat to be all shiny like this, so it's definitely going to need a matte finish on it. Let me grab one of the... Yep. So you can see this is way too shiny. And I won't even bother. Can I touch one of the skeletons, or is it going to be a problem? Yeah. So even the skeletons, it's not quite so bad on the skeletons. You don't quite notice because the surface is so rough. It doesn't sort of reflect it quite so much. But if I take a picture of that or I do video, it's just not going to be. It's just not going to be right. You know, it's just not going to look right. Okay, I think that was everything. Oh, you got my face now. Sorry, people. So today is the end of my painting for 4 months before when I go on holiday again, which is in about 4 months time. I will come back and we'll do some more painting. I've decided that I actually bought a lot of stuff, and so I thought I should probably show you my pile of shame should have reduced. But like an idiot, I went and bought more things. And I feel stupid for doing so. But I'm assuming you would like to see the things that I have for painting in the next 4 months. So when I come back and I do this again and I'm on holiday and we're doing some more painting, I'm sure that some of you would like to see some of the things I had selected. I bought some stuff recently. So let me know right now and I will grab them if you would like and show you what we have coming in the coming month. Coming future, okay? Things that you're likely to see. Also, it's kind of become obvious to me that I just don't have time to do shorts and make all the video content that I would like for this channel, and it's just you know, financially it's not working. So but doing a spin around of some of the miniatures that I've painted in the past or made seems to be something that people are interested in. So I'll do more of that for sure. So what do we got here? It wasn't really a multi-class. It was an option path for the thief character. See, that Pale Rider, that's exactly what I want to do when I rebuild the classes. I want to simply, if there's a path that we want to go down, then we have an option. It would be an addition, like you would decide, do you want to go down this path? You make a choice. You have to trade something off, you know? I will save poll writing time. I would just rewrite 5e. So I have rewritten 5e Fred Hubber. For those of you who don't know, and I've rewritten 5e. And it looks very much like basic D&D. And it looks a lot like 5e, but I've taken out so many different things. A huge amount of stuff. So what I will do is I will find a link to that. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. It's its first draft. It's not finalized yet. I expect it to take a little bit of time to actually get to a point where I'm happy to have it published. I'll get my brother to publish it for me. So I'll put a link in here now. You want to see them? So I'm going to show you the miniatures that I've got lined up for the future. Just give me a second. So I'll put my Patreon. Now, you do not need to join my Patreon to get access to this. It's free, okay? You don't have to be active. One of my things that I've noticed a lot of people jumping off Patreon, and even though I'm putting a lot of stuff up there, I'm not doing what the things, either people are finding it too financially much of a struggle. There's not enough money coming in. But what I want to do is really quickly, just a big shout out to some of the patrons who really have supported me. These are people who have, over the time that they've been with me, contributed at least $80. You know, whether they pay $1 a month or $5 or $10. Many people, it's just been like $2 or $5 or $1, and you can join my Patreon for just $1. But the people I wanted to shout out and say a big, huge thank you to, because really without you people, I would be kind of a little bit lost. And that is Stephen Kirkup. Stephen Kirkup, really big, huge thank you. He's been with me since 2019. Salt Heart, huge thank you, man. Really, it's been great. Big Kid is getting there. Big Kid is almost at that point where I'm going to make him a moderator. I think in the next 2 months he's going to wind up being a moderator. So big thank you to Big Kid as well. Dan Opime, I think it's Opime. I got your name wrong, I'm sure. Huge thank you. He has contributed so much over time. Beverly Towns is actually my mum. My mum supports me on Patreon. I know. Lenny Orth, thank you so much. You really have been great. You've been with me for a while now. Elliot Romero. Elliot, thank you very much. John Jones, thank you so much. Pat Sherwood, who told me it would only be 6 months and he's still with me. And a huge thank you to you. I really do appreciate it, Pat. Thank you for doing that. Okay. Toshiro Palemia. Gosh, Toshiro, I'm sorry, your surname, I'm struggling so much with it. But huge thank you. Tyler N. Thank you so much. I am really appreciating it. Stephen Jednick. I think it's Stephen Jednick. Jednick, I think I got it right. Samuel Brewster, who I was talking to the other day, actually. Agile Monk, who's been really, really good as well. I really do appreciate it. And I know he's been sick recently. Adrian Marez is almost there. It won't be too much longer. And Adrian, I know he's not able to make live streams a lot, but yeah, at least I can make you a patron, a moderator on my live streams. And we've got a few other people who are heading in that direction. Slowly but surely, they'll get there. And yeah, huge thank you for those people who have been contributing. Now that everybody's run away because I've been talking about patrons, let's show you some miniatures, shall we? I blame Crawford for everything wrong with 5e. Well, yeah. I don't blame Crawford. Crawford has to build what the company wants him to build in many respects. Right, so let me grab the stuff that you want to see. These are miniatures that I have grabbed, and I'll where is it? Okay, so we're going to change the view. I'm going to change the view so you can actually see what I've got. This is what we're going to deal with in the future, people. These are the things that I will paint in the future. This here is a dire troll. Now, my brother started the process and he was going to paint it. This is a big project. This will take me a week or more probably, because there's so much to paint. There's so much detail on it. But if you are hoping for a dire troll, this thing has got 4 heads on it, multiple arms. It looks very impressive. So that is coming in the future. In about 4 months' time, maybe I'll do that one. Maybe I won't. We'll see. But that's one of my options. So I wanted to point that one out, show that to you. Next, I have the Bodok. This is a Bodok, and the Bodok has got 2. Now, it's at least a simple paint job. Hopefully it's not reflecting too much. They're not that complicated. They're pretty easy. I mean, the paint schema on the back sort of suggests it all. There isn't much going on. But I thought that would be fun to do something like that. I shouldn't have bought this one, but I did. And this is a pentadrone. This is a modron. The pentadrone is kind of like the big modron leader, and it's kind of folded down, which means it'll make it really difficult to paint. But I thought it was so interesting, and this is kind of what it was supposed to look like, roughly. I don't know if I'll do it exactly like that. So I've now got a pentadrone. I saw that, and I've never had a pentadrone miniature. I've got a few modrons, but not a lot. So I thought that would be kind of cool. This here is Slardy. My go-to for dungeon for new players features modrons. I really like the modrons. They really are quite interesting. So this here is a spell casting. It's a green slard. So it's got a staff. It's got some magic coming off its hands. This will be quite a long paint job. I think it would take me quite a lot of time to get it done. But I do have it for the future. Who knows when that will be. But yep, it's on the cards as an option. This is where I start heading into my problems, and that is smaller miniatures I struggle with. Hi, Prepare, Cook and Survive. How are you? I'm just showing off some of the stuff that I will probably be painting in the future. I don't know how I will feel about trying to paint something that's medium-sized with all this detail, but these are elf wizards, basically. I bought these years ago, ages ago, and I've never got round to actually painting them, and I probably will. Yeah, it's just how will I approach it. Are my eyes working? It would come down to, am I having a good day when my eyes are working really well? And sometimes my hand's not clear, still enough, and my eyes aren't that great. So these are hard miniatures for me to paint. So that they may happen. I prefer monsters myself. I like painting the monsters. Even though I don't game master as much as I play more as a player than anything else. Okay, next. This is a little bit of a problem, but at least the paint job on it shouldn't be difficult. An Ankeg. I think I have one Ankeg, but this is a much larger miniature for an Ankeg. It's a bit hard to see in the plastic, but you can kind of roughly see what's going on here. That's probably a better angle, isn't it? So it doesn't reflect too much. Yeah, Ankeg. What does it look on the back like on the back? The paint job shouldn't be difficult. It's just getting the brush in. There's so many areas to sort of have to jam it into, that'll be the biggest problem. Get your minis out for the lads. Yeah, I'm getting out the things. This is my pile of shame. I also have almost all of the miniatures from Castle Ravenloft, the board game, to do, and the Citadel game. Board game, D&D board game. Like most of those miniatures haven't been painted either. I'm going to try to paint more of those in the future. Okay, there's a few things sitting in here that were opened that my brother was going to paint that he didn't get around to doing, and that I will try to get around to doing myself. And that is, here's an Aarakocra. I don't know how difficult that is going to be to paint. I would imagine that it's still going to be a little bit tricky because it's still quite smaller. The head and the hands are the things that are probably going to worry me the most in terms of painting this. I have a second Aarakocra. There's more than one. So I bought these in a pack. They came in two. And yeah. Oh, sorry about this, people. I'll move that out of the way. That's kind of getting in the way a little bit. Right, sorry about that. So yeah, this is an Aarakocra. And you can only imagine how many minis I haven't painted between my two printers. Look, Big Kid, I know how much stuff you print, but I've decided I need to stop buying so many miniatures. So I've actually kind of toned it down a lot more. Now I've also got two of these, and I wanted to show you these as well. These are Dragonborn. Now, getting Dragonborn miniatures is actually quite difficult. And when they had that line come out with Dragonborn that you could purchase, I decided I had to grab them. Again, going to be quite difficult to paint. I don't know when I'll do them. They're already out of the box. Out of the box probably means they're more likely to happen. But there's a lot of detail, a lot of work on something like that. The flashing's not too bad on these too, by the way. And then this is the other one. I think that I prefer the pose on this one, and its positioning. It's made in a couple of parts, so there's a big seam line, which there's actually quite a few seam lines actually on this one. And there's one other miniature that I have that I actually bought recently, and I shouldn't have purchased it, but I did. And I guess the reason why I got it is because I didn't have a miniature that was like it. And it's this. It's a frost salamander. This thing is very expensive in New Zealand. It's quite a large miniature. And because it's a monster and because it's large and because the paint job for it should be relatively simple, probably means that this would be my go-to for the very first thing I come back to. Out of everything that I have, which is ridiculous, right? It's kind of stupid. Oh, you're going to paint it. It's probably going to cover more area. It's going to probably still take you a long time just because of the amount of area you've got to cover, and it's not going to deplete the or diminish your pile of shame, Fred. But this frost salamander, I'm kind of getting really attached to it. I was standing in front of the shelf. And I'm thinking, do I really want to buy more Wizards of the Coast stuff, even though it's licensed to WizKids, and it's not like all the money goes to Hasbro or to Wizards of the Coast. Do I really want to spend $30 on something? And yeah, so I got suckered in. It was really hard not to just grab it, so I did. So yeah, that's those are the things you're likely to see in the future on my channel, which is stupid because I shouldn't be doing that. I should be just getting rid of the stuff that I already have. There's no need to go and buy more bits of plastic. You know, I've got most of it sits in a wardrobe. You know, I mean, I probably pull it out more for my live streams than I do for my games, because I haven't game mastered. When was the last time I game mastered? I think it was for Halloween. It was Halloween last year. I did Ravenloft. I ran Ravenloft for the group. So I did the Ravenloft Castle, as it happens, and I think before that I'd actually run through the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle with my group as well. But other than that, I've been playing a pirate for at least a year now. I think it's at least a year, maybe a little bit longer. Who knows? I can't. Time sort of just diminishes. It's like, how do you track it? Coming out of San Diego for Comic-Con one of these days, and I'll send you back with tons of minis to paint. No, don't do that. Don't send stuff to me, big kid, to paint. Don't do that. I've got enough. I don't need any more stuff. You know, there's too much. Anyway, I am going to go and have a walk and go and cruise out. Hey, thank you for hanging out with me on my holidays, people. I do appreciate it. I know not necessarily the best content under the sun. I don't want to even call it that. I just want to say these are discussions. I like to think of this as we are dealing with material that will hopefully be useful to you, and just hang out and have a good time with each other. Do you know what I mean? I probably won't be doing that. If anything, I'm wanting to actually go disappear more into the warps. I actually would like to leave Helensville and go somewhere even more remote. I know that sounds terrible. I feel like I'm becoming a bit of a hermit. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I'm becoming more like my dad. It's strange. My dad just sort of lived on his own. I was like, oh, why am I thinking this way now? But maybe it's because there's so many people living in my house with me, and it's getting to me a little bit. Quiet time's very unusual. It's really, even on my days off. quiet time doesn't really feel that quiet. Anyway, but thank you, everybody. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you for everybody who's been watching. Thank you to everybody who took part in the poll, or if you're just, you know, just chatting along with me. It's been a fun time. I enjoyed the whole process, and I'm feeling a bit better about everything today, which is good. Yeah. So everything should be working reasonably well, I would imagine. I think we're going to swing back into things quite nicely. So look, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours, unless they're monsters. If your neighbours are monsters, then either get yourself an axe, a sword, or a gun, and make sure that they go on the ground, okay? But I'm sure that your neighbours aren't monsters, even if you think they are. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. What the heck? What was I thinking saying that? Sometimes the things that come out of my mouth are ridiculous. Are they not? Seriously? I am jesting, people. You do realise this. Oh, Steely's on. Go check out Steely. He's a good guy.